members of the public who may be watching online to our meeting. My name is Eric Kerry. I'm Councillor Eric Kerry, Chairman of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee. I may remind members that the meeting is being broadcast live and to use your microphones when speaking so you can be heard on the broadcast. I need to say before we begin the meeting, I'd like to remind those members of the public that are present, but there are none, so I won't read it, but the usual things about placards, should anybody arrive, will be in place. Item number 1 is the minutes of the last meeting, which we held on the 7th of March. May I ask the committee if the minutes from that meeting can be agreed, please? Show of hands. Thank you. That's unanimous. I'll now ask Joe Toomey, admin officer, to confirm the apologies and substitutes, please, for today's meeting.
Thank you. In terms of apologies and substitutions, we have an apology from Councillor Place, who's being substituted today by Councillor Creamer. We've also had apologies from Councillors Matt Seacoat and Khan from Nottingham City Council, Yvonne Davidson and Sue Reader.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't know if I could ask Councillor Creamer just to send our regards to Councillor Place. We do miss her, so
be happy to, Chair. Yeah, she does miss being here.
Thank you.
But it's unavoidable, unfortunately.
Yes, thank you very much. Item number 3, moving on to declarations of interest by members and officers. Does any council or officer have any interest in any matter on the agenda they need to disclose, please? No, I don't see any. Thank you very much. So moving on to the first substantive item, which is item number 4 on the agenda, the review of the progress of the Climate Action Plan. Before I hand over to Tamsin to introduce the report, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 15 of the agenda pack. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Seconded. So Tamsin, would you please take us through the report?
Thank you, Chair. Members are aware that the Pension Fund received the first climate risk report in October 2020 with a number of recommendations which became the Fund's Climate Action Plan. The plan has been reviewed and updated on receipt of each subsequent climate risk report. The committee has reviewed progress on a 6-monthly basis. The report shows the progress which has been made to the date of the report on these actions. All actions are progressing in line with the original plan. The Pension Fund will continue to monitor and manage all financially material risks to which it is exposed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Tamsin. From what we can see, I believe it's a very positive report and shows some of the good work we've done. Thank you very much to you and the team for doing that, and LGPS as well, I think, may be involved in the background a little bit on that. So any questions or comments from members? Councillor Butler.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, as you know, I'm quite new to this, so I may not sort of know all the history of it. But the whole issue of investment and climate change is in the news quite a lot at the moment, isn't it? One way and another, and especially and in particular with investment. So I see and hear we've been working on this since 2020, which is what 3-4 years now. So how are we quite well ahead, sort of perhaps compared to other schemes, comparable schemes around the country? Sort of, are we doing anything sort of perhaps better than others? I'm just interested, really.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Would you like to answer that, Tamsin, please?
Yes, we believe we are ahead, and our pool feels it is one of the leaders within the LGPS. The climate risk report that we produce on an annual basis is not currently a requirement for the LGPS, so we were ahead of the game in doing this. It's anticipated that it will be a requirement pretty shortly, but we've been doing it for some time as a matter of good practice.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yes,
interesting.
Yes, and obviously we have to watch this space because we don't know what guidance and legislation, etc., are coming ahead. Councillor Waters, you indicated.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Page 14, reference 19. Do we know when the next valuation is likely to be due? Because it says every 2 to 3 years.
I didn't quite understand you. Would you like to just repeat?
Yeah.
Councillor.
Do we know the date of when the next triannual valuation is going to be? So it's a repeat climate scenario analysis. It says every 2 to 3 years, but it hasn't actually nailed down when it's next going to be due. The last one I think was December 2022. It said.
Yeah, it is usually 3 years. There has been talk about it changing to 4, but I'm not sure whether that is the case. Can you? Thank you, Tamsin.
Yeah, the next triennial valuation is at the end of March 2025, so that's at the end of next March. The reason the climate action plan is slightly approximate is that there's the original climate scenario analysis. The plan was to do it every 2 to 3 years. There has since been some national guidance which suggests that we need to be doing that work as part of the work around the triennial valuation. So that timetable is going to be brought into line. So we will be doing that work in line with the next triennial valuation based on the exposure we have at the end of March 2025.
Thank you, Tamsin. Does that answer your question, Councillor Waters? Thank you. Any other questions or comments, please, from members or officers? I see none. So we've moved the recommendation. It was duly seconded. Can I have a vote, a show of hands? All in favour, please. Any against? Any abstentions? So we have one abstention. Thank you. That's carried. Item number 5 is the climate stewardship plan. And again, before I hand over to Tamsin, I'll move the recommendation, which is on page 18 of the report.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Saddington. Tamsin, will you take us through the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The Climate Stewardship Plan was first adopted by the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund in April 2021, following the first climate risk report. This plan has been reviewed following the most recent climate risk report to reflect the findings of that report and to refresh the wording. The Climate Stewardship Plan identifies the areas in which stewardship techniques can be leveraged to further understand and manage climate-related risks within the fund. It focuses on engagements with a number of specific companies and on the monitoring of the investment process of the principal investment managers identified through the climate risk analysis. The Engagement Update Report in Appendix B provides details of LGPS Central's engagement rationale, objectives and strategy for the companies identified and highlights the engagement activity and progress on each of these key companies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tamsin. It is a detailed report. There's a lot of information there that we've been able to bring to the public meeting. In times previously, we've not been able to bring, I think, quite a significant amount of detail forward. I think is that the case in some respects?
Yes, it's certainly something that we've moved towards bringing more. We did have another climate stewardship report that was similar to this time last year.
Yes, thank you. Any questions or comments from members, please? Councillor Creeper, Jim.
Just one question and a comment. I mean, thanks for the information, it's very good. And it shows that there's been very big decreases in the emissions over the COVID period, which obviously has gone now, so we need to monitor one or two are going up. But specifically the Anglo-American, is there any reason why that information stops at 2021? Everyone else is 2022.
Tamsin.
I can't answer that specific detailed question. A lot of this is based on companies' own reporting. It could be a peculiarity of their year-end date, but I can find out and get back to you.
Okay, thank you. It's just that it makes it seem the most positive of all, but it hasn't got the final year.
Sure. And we've got to remember that obviously all the metrics involved in climate change are still evolving methodologies and things. So we have to get the best out of it that we can.
Yeah. And at the moment we've got to deal with COVID, so that's going to skew any figures over the next few years anyway.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Councillor Waters, I think you indicated.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll keep this brief, as I think we already know my views on this particular element. Comparatively, our holdings are so diluted compared to stocks in issue, I feel engagement will make little to no difference. The pension scheme allows for stock lending, in which your voting rights could be in the hands of someone else at the time of a vote, meaning you're not actually doing what you say you're doing by engaging. Therefore, I feel the pension fund is actually lazy in that you wait for regulation change rather than being proactive. If you really believe in climate change stewardship, holding companies in your portfolio such as Shell, BP, Rio Tinto, who are arguably doing more than ever to pollute the planet, in spite of all your so-called engagement, is, in my view, hypocrisy and farcical. If you genuinely believe in climate change stewardship, you would sell and exclude your polluting holdings. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. You are consistent in explaining your views on this subject, and I think we need to be consistent in the way that we explain to the people in the room and those watching that we're very consistent in acting on the advice that we get from climate experts that we employ, climate experts that we are part of, in, for example, in LAPFA. Tamsin, can you add anything to what I've just said, please?
Only to say that for our holdings through our active mandates, stock lending does not occur across key votes. It always gets called back so that those votes can be made.
Thank you, Tamsin. Any other questions or comments, please? Councillor Butler.
It's just an observation, really. It's not a question. I suppose it's a comment, but really interesting information. This, not just for the specific information about what it's saying, but even the basic stuff, the background behind the companies, because most of which, as laymen and individuals, we've heard of, but there are still some we haven't. So just to have this basic information is actually quite helpful. So I'm sure it take quite a while to pull all this together. So just a note of appreciation.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councillor Butler. Yes, William.
Very quick follow-on comment from that. There's a very useful glossary on page 46, if anybody didn't get that far, which explains in simple terms a lot of the language which is used.
Okay, thank you, William. Any further questions or comments, please? I see none, so let's move to the vote. The recommendation's been moved and seconded. Can I see your vote by show of hands, please? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Any against? There's one against, two against. Okay, so that's carried. Thank you very much. Item number 6 is the report on the local government pension scheme conference. Again, before I hand over to John, who will introduce the report, the recommendation is on page 57, and I'll move that.
Second it, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Saddington. John, Mr. Clues, would you like to take us through the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This year's conference was held up in York and was attended by myself and the Pension Board Chair. The report provides an overview of the main topics and speakers at the annual LGPS conference that took place on the 18th and 19th of January. There was a keynote address by the Pensions Ombudsman, Dominic Harris. He shared his challenges and priorities. One thing I would say, the Ombudsman raised issues in terms of number of cases that were going through the Ombudsman around overpayments, fraud, pension transfers. I would like to say that the Ombudsman also acknowledged that they're not able to, or haven't been able to, address complaints as fast as they would, as they had a cyber attack back in early 2023, which has put them back quite a few months. We also had an address from Simon Hawke, the Under Secretary of State for Local Government, and he announced his commitment to knowledge and training in the LGPS. That's for committee members, board members, and other participants. we had an employer landscape panel session, and this is something that we've highlighted in this committee. The panel discussed the challenges and implications of the growing diverse employer base, which especially includes the academisation and outsourcing of services which have an impact on the fund. We always have a legal update, and one of the main topics was the General Code of Practice, which I will be presenting another report later on in the committee. Also, pension dashboards was high on the agenda, and again, transfer regulations and a cyber risk. We had a panel session on responsible investment, which has been highlighted in a previous report today. We also had a closed session. It was almost like it wasn't allowed to be filmed or discussed, but this was on cyber security, and we had a representative from the National Cyber Security Centre talking to the conference about the importance of cyber security, and there is going to be further information coming to committee later on in the year about our cyber security policy. Again, there was some discussions around measuring knowledge and skills. We had an interactive session about that. And then right at the end, we always have an investment outlook. So what I would encourage members to do, if you get a chance to go to this conference, it is really interesting. It focuses on some of the main admin and challenges that the fund has. And like I say, you'll enjoy it. So there is the next one next year. So that's my.
Okay, thank you, John. Can I ask a question? So, in terms of the Ombudsman's workload,
Yes.
I know that you report information at different stages in the year, different times in the year about performance of this pension fund. How are we doing in Nottinghamshire? Are we getting many of our complaints referred to the Ombudsman? How do we compare to others? I mean, if you want to send information out later, that if you don't have it to hand.
Well, it'll be coming out in the year-end report, Chair. But one thing I can say is that we've got about 3 outstanding Ombudsman claims. We had a response about 2 weeks ago to one of them, and these have been outstanding for over 4 years.
Wow.
So they've come back quite positive, really, in terms of the responses, and we haven't been found. Guilt is the wrong word, but we haven't been wanting.
Yeah.
We are awaiting one more report from the Ombudsman, and I responded to the Ombudsman back in November, and we're expecting another judgment, and I hope it's going to be the same. We don't get many, but when we do, it does take quite a bit of time and effort to respond.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, John. Obviously, we'll see the report in July, the admin report. Okay, any questions or comments from members, please, on this item? Okay, I see none. We've made the recommendation. Can I see your vote, my show of hands, please? All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item is item number 9, and it's the one that you mentioned in your last report, John. It's the sorry. Oh, so no. So it's not. Sorry, apologies. I've moved on. I've gone to the other conference, whatever. Proxy voting number 7. Goodness me, I got overexcited for a moment. So, item number 7 is proxy voting. So before I hand over to Kieran, the recommendation is on page 61. I'll move that.
I will second it. I actually thought I'd fallen asleep for 2 items.
No. It was me. I did. Thank you very much, Councillor Saddington. Okay, Kieran, please take us through your report.
You might well fall asleep. Thanks, Chair. The fund has responsibility for voting any directly held shares. Voting is undertaken on the fund's behalf by Hermes EOS in line with the voting principles of LGPS Central. LGPS Central also engages with the companies it has holdings in, and this is reported in its quarterly stewardship update. And the most recent update highlights, among other things, the new task force on nature-related financial disclosures, which encourages organisations to disclose how biodiversity is incorporated into 4 key categories: governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and targets. An overview of the Hermes EOS voting activity and Central's engagement work is shown in the report and published on the fund website on a quarterly basis. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kieran. I'll open that up to members for any questions or comments, please. I see not. So, again, we've moved the recommendation. Can I see a show of hands, please? All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? There's 1 abstention. The report recommendation is carried. Thank you. Okay. I think I'm moving on to item number 8 now, which is the Local Authority Pension Fund Forum. And similarly, before I hand over to Kieran, recommendation page 64, I'll move it.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Thank you, Sue. Kieran, please take through the LAPFA report. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair. The Local Authority Pension Fund Forum was formed in 1990 to provide an opportunity for the UK's local authority pension funds to discuss investment and shareholder engagement issues. It exists to assist administering authorities discharge their statutory responsibilities and promote the long-term investment interests of UK local authority pension funds. Hybrid business meetings were held in October last year and January, which I attended online as an officer representative. The October business meeting incorporated the AGM and had an interesting discussion about how the 2022 mini-budget acted as a catalyst to a bond market crisis in which the Bank of England was forced to intervene. LAPF commented that one cause of this was the obligation on pension funds to discount liabilities at the bond rate rather than the overall expected rate of return for its basket of investments. The January meeting discussed the problem of companies being able to avoid disclosing certain ESG matters in their accounts. There were also presented updates on LAPF's company engagement work up to the end of December 2023. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Kieran. Any questions or comments from any members, please? Sue, Councillor Saddington.
May I just ask the question regarding the Actions Fund in advance? Are we working on a plan? It says at the bottom, producing a plan. Are we actually working on it?
Is that this one? No, we're on. No, we're not. We're on the break. So you have fallen. You have fallen asleep. So there you go. Erase that one. Okay. Yes. Yeah, okay. Okay. So I don't see any other indications. The recommendation's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So, moving on to item number 9, which is the Pensions Regulator General Code of Practice. And again, before I hand over to John, who will introduce the report, it's been well summarised in the report. The actual Code of Practice itself is rather large, rather thick. Have read it. We were given it by officers to read pre-agenda, and it has been available for all members to see. So, John, will you take us through the report, please?
Page by page. Thank you, Chair. The objective of the report is, as the chair said, to bring your attention to the general code, and I have put a link into the report so that you can go onto the Pension Regulator website and have a look at it. I would recommend that you do. It is 171 pages long. It might help you sleep, but there are some interesting points in there, and it is very important. The LGPS has been waiting for this for quite some time, and it actually appeared and has gone into. It was agreed by Parliament in March, so it's fairly new. So the scope of the report is that it covers 5 areas. There are 51 modules, but not all of them apply to local government pension scheme. Some are more for general pension schemes. But the LGPS Scheme Advisory Board is actually producing some guidance to help funds identify some of the more relevant requirements that the LGPS will be required to follow. The main requirements and the new modules, should I say, require the scheme manager to establish and operate adequate internal controls. Also introduces new modules on cyber security, which we've mentioned previously. There are some areas in relation to pension scams and what pension funds should be doing, and it also increases the requirements for training of committee members and board members. So these are all areas that the fund will be required to look at. So actions that the fund should take: the pension fund should review the code in detail, which we will be doing, assess its current compliance or our current compliance, produce a plan for the necessary changes, and look at some of the good practice elements as well of the code. So to do this, really, we should be and are attending seminars. We've been to a number of webinars, and we will be reporting back to Pensions Committee and to Pensions Board on a regular progress on how we propose to implement the code. So really, the recommendation is that we conduct a gap analysis against what the pension fund is currently doing, looking at our existing policies and procedures, and then create a plan for ensuring compliance against the new code. We have about just over a year to do this, and the regulator will be starting to look at what funds are actually doing after that year. So we already comply with some bits. We possibly should look at some of our policies to renew them in others, but a full report will come along in the near future. I think it'd be wise to also wait until we've got guidance from the Scheme Advisory Board.
Okay. Thank you very much, John, for that. Obviously, it's very important that we do all that, as what you just said. So, any questions from members? Councillor Sage, I think you were going to ask a question.
Well, I'll come back to my question because I am sitting here awake. You did mention that you're waiting for guidance. Does this mean you're waiting for guidance before the plan is started, or have you started the plan?
Given it only really came into force in March, we are waiting for guidance. It's on most of the meetings and conference agendas going forward. So we will be starting to put a plan together in the near future.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Creamer, did you indicate? Speaker, please. Microphone.
Apologies. Just a question which may tie in with the last question anyway, is that as far as training for the councillors are concerned, do we know, will it be internal training? Will it have to be outside? And the main point as well, as far as I'm concerned, Chair, is will it be members as well from outside the committee who may sit in every now and then?
Yeah.
Because it would be a bit of a farce if one or two people come in and didn't know, and if the legislation says they should be trained, it's not quite as judicial, but it's getting that way.
You make a very good point, Councillor Creamer. I think training is important both for members and possible substitutes. We do have some substitutes that have been trained previously, so they may need to be updating only rather than new stuff. So, Tamsin, do you want to respond about training on that?
Just to say that one of the requirements will be to have a formal training policy. We currently have an informal training policy. All members are encouraged to attend training on an ongoing basis, and all new members are encouraged to complete the fundamentals course. There is similarly an encouragement to where deputies are appointed for those to be people who have already been trained, but we accept, and I'm sure there will be something in the guidance when we finally get it, which accepts that there will be a lead-in time because the training is only available once a year, and if somebody's appointed, they could well be on the committee for a while before they actually have the opportunity to attend that training.
So, and records will be kept.
Records are already being kept.
Yes, will be kept.
Yes, and also records of training undertaken during the year.
Yes,
need to be reported in the annual report.
Yes, and also the Nottinghamshire Scheme Advisory Board will be keeping a close look at this. I'm sure that we adhere to the guide.
I'm sure, and they have much more formal training requirements already.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. On the gap analysis and creating a new compliance plan, you've said you've got up to a year in order to do that. Do you have an estimate of how long it will actually take to do that? Because I'm thinking at some stage we might want to put elements of it on a work plan to review.
Yes.
We are compliant in some of the areas, so I think the advice from LGPS, our actuaries, for example, which we attended a meeting, is not to panic was the thing. We are compliant. What we need to do is to review that compliance. So I don't have an estimate, Councillor Waters, but we do need to do that piece of work to make sure that policies and procedures do come to you when they are adjusted, and we have got a plan to update some of those policies and procedures over the next couple of committees. So there will be policies coming to you to approve. I forget when they are actually, when we've planned to get them in. I think they're on the work plan, but aren't they?
So let's try to keep this as an open discussion, whatever. If you look at to be placed at the end of the work programme, there's one on pension fund review of cyber security, and that was one of the elements that came out, I think, of the code that we need. So there are things creeping in, maybe not yet placed, but that they will be coming in and added to, I think, is the answer to that. Okay, thank you. John.
I just wanted to add to that, because we have done some work prior to the code coming into place anyway, as you just said about cyber security and various other aspects. So we are compliant, but we need to make sure we're compliant and improve our compliance, if that makes any sense.
Yes, I think often it's about the words and terminology used rather than the detail behind it. Thank you. Any other questions or comments, please? Sorry, Sarah, sorry, I apologise. I did see you indicate, and yes.
I was just going to add a bit to what John had said, and as we reported previously, we have been doing a review of the risk register. We will be bringing that, and as part of that, we have built in where we are able to link a risk to an item on the code as well as the LGPS regulation. The other thing is also we will be recruiting a governance officer when that person is in place. They will obviously support some of the activity that we will need to do around the code. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that extra detail, Sarah. So, move the recommendation. Had a good debate. Councillor Sallington.
I'm not sure. I stand to be corrected. I'm not sure if we opened this for discussion because I don't remember seconding it. Before, if we did.
Yes, I'm sure. I believe so. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So we've moved the recommendation. All those in favour, please show of hands. And that is again unanimous. Thank you very much. I think we now move on to the work programme, which is on page 74, recommendation. I'll move it. I've moved the recommendation. Thank you, Sue. Tamsin, work programme, please.
Thank you, Chair. In the appendix, you can see the work programme for the rest of the committee meetings of the current cycle and the next. This will be added to as we receive additional guidance on the requirements of the code. The committee is asked to identify any additional reports required. Thank you, Chair.
My only comment really is that the 13th of June looks to be like a fund valuation kind of meeting. Is there anything else that will be coming to that? Do we know at this stage? Okay. No.
To be honest, looking at the investments does take up the majority of a meeting anyway.
Yes.
But unless there's something that comes up that's urgent, we don't have plans for anything else. I don't think for the next meeting.
Thank you, Tamsin. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got 3 suggestions for inclusion to the work plan, which I feel are constructive. The first one is the pension lifetime allowance has been abolished and it's been replaced with a tax-free lump sum allowance, and there's also a new death benefit allowance. So there could be some transitional reliefs involving complex calculations and tax consequences for our pension members. This area could impact members of the main scheme, but also the ABCs they hold. Could we have a report at the next meeting or as soon as practically possible in terms of what impact there has been on our administration, costs incurred, and also if anything's being done by the NOTS pension scheme to communicate to our scheme members?
Sarah, is that for you?
Yes, of course, we can bring something on that. I also would want to possibly make a suggestion that we invite the actuary to come and actually, possibly in one of the working party meetings, give a presentation about that, or to have that presentation at committee. But yes, clearly we can have a look at that, and certainly our technical and regulations team within the pension administration side are looking at those changes.
Okay. Did you say you had another?
I do. I'll go into my second one. Could we have a review of the stock lending policy? So this will, if we're talking about we want to engage companies over exclusion, I think it's appropriate to maybe have that conversation in a working group.
Tamsin, do you want to come in on that? Because some of the stock lending happens in the passive. What's the word for it?
Yes.
Asset
So,
passive we have. So yes.
So we can certainly take a look at stock lending, both that done by LGPS Central and that done by LGIM on our passive funds. We can't influence what happens at LGIM because that's their decision. We've got more influence over what happens at Central, but certainly we could have a training session so that it's understood how that works, and in particular how it works this voting season.
Good. And a third?
Okay, third and final, Chair, this is with your indulgence. Could we have something on the agenda for next meeting to consider writing a letter of support to Baroness Altman? She's the former pensions minister and a Conservative life peer who has put in a private members' bill to the House of Lords, which is at committee stage. I say this because the Notts Pension Fund invests in investment trusts. These investments trade on the stock market and invest in a number of other companies which are essential to the UK economy and our national interest. However, due to a ridiculous piece of legacy EU legislation, which the UK has interpreted in a way that no other country does, even in the EU, the charges on our investment trusts are double counted. This is therefore forcing valuations down because institutional and retail investors are shunning these investments because the charges look very high when they've been falsely inflated due to the double counting. Baroness Altman, with cross-party support, wants to repeal this damaging part of EU legislation. I believe 100 companies or so have already written to the Baroness in support, as has the bulk of the investment trust sector. I think it would be a fantastic thing for this committee to do as a pension committee to also write in our support to what the Baroness is trying to do. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, can we come back to you on that? We need to discuss and look at the issue you're talking about. William, can you?
A very quick comment. It's a very real issue, and I support
Yes.
Councillor Waters and what he says.
Yes. Okay. So that sounds a positive response. We'll get back to you very soon, if that's okay. Thank you. Okay. So if that's the end of the work programme debate, can I show by show of hands, please, be in favour of the report? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, and that almost brings us to the end of today's meeting. But before I bring it to a close, I just wanted to use this opportunity to say that today is almost finished, but today is Mr. Clues, John's final meeting, as he will be retiring shortly. And I'd like to say on behalf, I'm sure that I can say greatly on behalf of myself and everybody on the committee, officers and other guests, thank you for all your hard work, John, as the pensions admin manager. And I am understand that John's been doing this for about 35 years, something like that, service to local government in a variety of roles, but in more recent years as pension admin manager. And you've seen significant changes in LGPS over the years, no doubt. For our fund, John has led the work to change of the scheme since 2014, implemented the Civica pension admin system, increased the number of members. It's been incredible, particularly in the last few years with academies and all the other companies, outsourced companies. And then worked with a plethora of national institutions, initiatives such as McLeod, GMP, East Midlands Pension Office, and all that kind of stuff. So thank you very much, John, from all of us. And should you find time in the future, I would love to have you back as a pensioner representative member on this fund. And I get shakes of heads already for that. No doubt that's been asked already. So thank you, John, and have a very good retirement. And over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that I'd like to thank the Pension Committee members, past and present, for their support and listening to my presentations of committee reports. I'd just like to say pension administration is an important part of the pension fund, as it is the point at which the fund meets its ultimate objective of paying our members and looking after future pensions of members. So thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure. Cheers.
Thank you, John. And we'll try our best to make sure your pensions are going to be paid in the future too. All right, I'll now bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much, members and officers.